WasteExpo prior to this, or?
Kind of the weather, a little bit of what's going on in DC. Nothing crazy. The weather is getting nicer. Steph's in Ohio, Cleveland area, so she's got bad
Oh,
weather all the
nice.
time. So she's waiting for like the one good week of weather. I think our listeners are gonna get really tired because every time we start an episode, it's like, "How's the weather? How's the weather?" Every time, it's never better. So that's just where we are.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, we do get to travel, so we do get to get out of the inclement weather that we face sometimes where we live normally. So
Yeah, so the quick thing on that stuff, because I know we both went to Phoenix where it's supposed to be hot and dry. It was 40 degrees and raining the whole week we were there. And then I go to Florida and it's 40 degrees and raining. I went to Raleigh, North Carolina 2 weeks ago. There was a tornado watch. We had to shelter in place. I'm like, what's happening with the weather where I'm going? Why do I keep traveling to places that are just like, well, it's a natural disaster. Good luck.
yeah, I was just in Anaheim for Natural Products Expo West, and Anaheim was pretty windy and chilly the few days that I was there. It's just, but the funny thing is we're talking, about circular economy, food waste. We're talking about all these solutions that contribute to, the environment, and hopefully we see brighter days ahead with it. So that's pretty exciting. And we have WasteExpo coming up, which is going to be, we're going to talk a little bit here with you, Ryan, about the your upcoming session and about the conference. So we're super excited to have you with us today. Everyone, welcome to Waste World, where Gage Edwards and I talk each week about the world of waste, and we have conversations with experts, industry leaders, thought leaders such as Ryan Cooper, who is here with us today. He's the Vice President of Circular Economy Solutions and the Organics Lead at Rubicon. So we're looking forward to chatting to you about food waste, the circular economy, everything that encompasses, taking better care of our environment. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to I know you and Gage were just talking a couple of minutes before about your role, but can you please give us and the listeners a quick explanation about what you do and your role at Rubicon?
Sure thing. So Rubicon manages the waste and recycling for lots of companies, large and small, all throughout US and Canada. And so, no matter what the waste stream is, Rubicon can handle it. And so we have a large team that handles kind of standard waste and recycling. And then we have another large team that handles commodities, things that get a rebate like scrap metal, cardboard, and plastic film. And our team sort of handles everything else. So we call it sustainable materials management. Most people call it zero waste consulting, and we call them material characterizations. Most people call them waste audits, regulated and hazardous waste, truly hard to recycle materials, things like mannequins and car bumpers and carpets and mattresses. And organics recycling used to be a hard to recycle material. We'll get into it during our discussion, but I like to think that it's not quite as hard to recycle as it used to be. So organics for us mostly means food waste, but it can also mean wood waste or sludges, all kinds of other materials like yard waste. But I think, the main thing that we're here to talk about today is food waste.
So, what is food waste? We can we can pull up statistics about, how much is wasted and things like that. But what is Rubicon? What are you seeing in terms of the food waste issue, the food waste problem, and what does it look like right now? We have, regulations coming up, and that have been implemented regarding, such as SB 1383 in California regarding organics recycling. So what does the industry look like currently?
So for me, I think that the regulations sort of put a bow on it as far as it's the easiest thing to see, this groundswell. But even with places that don't have any kind of regulations or landfill bans are still experiencing a growth in food waste recycling infrastructure, as well as the ability for commercial entities to recycle their food waste. So I think, animal feed has been a, kind of a tried and true outlet for the material over the years, but more and more composting and anaerobic digestion infrastructure and specialized haulers allow more and more businesses access to the ability to recycle their food waste. And I think that, for me, the holy grail is that, oh, this is just what we do. And so in those places where there are, regulations, places like San Francisco that, have been around, for going on 2 decades now doing this activity, it becomes kind of just the what we do. And so I think that throughout the country, obviously there are places that there are still gaps in infrastructure, but more and more folks are familiar with, oh, food waste doesn't always go in the trash and there's a higher and better use for it.
Yeah, whether it's composting or getting it, into a bin that's going to go to a facility where it gets taken care of, that's not a landfill. I mean, it's something that people can, resonate with more easily than other ways of other materials when it comes to recycling. So it's very interesting to talk to you today because we also have the food recovery forum at WasteExpo this year. And I don't know if you've had a chance to attend any of those sessions, but it's really interesting to see, the breadth of the industry, the haulers, the operators, the organics recyclers, companies like Rubicon who are just, who are doing it as, part of their daily business and their day-to-day, and see what kind of innovations and the challenges that they're facing. What are the challenges that you're seeing?
So yeah, really looking forward to Waste Expo. And of course, we used to talk about the food recovery hierarchy, and now we talk about the wasted food scale. And so, shout out to preventing food waste in the first place, and donation to people as well as feeding animals before we even talk about composting and anaerobic digestion or land application. But still all kinds of challenges across that wasted food scale. There are just all different challenges related to preventing food waste. Obviously, nobody is in the business of creating food waste in the first place, but in this amazing country of abundance, whether it's grocery stores or any kind of other food business, including restaurants, you don't want to run out of the main thing that you're selling. And so ordering is always a challenge because, again, people want to get smarter about ordering, but at the same time, absolutely don't want to run out of the things that they're selling. So there are challenges with animal feed as well, because not everything can be fed to animals, and there's FSMA and other regulations that mandate that we are feeding animals smartly. So different states will have different regulations that can be a challenge to overcome. And then on composting and anaerobic digestion, there's a long list of challenges. I might point to one, which is just that culture, that habit. I think a lot of people really are still in the mindset of, no matter what material they have in their hand that they want to get rid of, they're going to put it in the closest bin that looks like a trash can to them. And so that idea that different materials need to go in different bins, and just having those bins nearby is just one very simple way to talk about that culture change that sometimes needs to happen in order for folks to get the right material in the right collection container.
Yeah, so it comes down to like education, accessibility, just like so many other aspects of the waste industry. Just need more of
100%.
it.
Absolutely, and labeling too. I sat in a session recently at a previous conference that talked about how they changed their labeling from trash to landfill. So it shows the journey of where that waste goes to. So that way the consumer, the person throwing out the trash, whether it goes in landfill, compost, recycling, kind of gets a better understanding of where it's going to end up. And that way from an education standpoint, it's a little easier to relate. And I really, I every time I sit in a session, talk to somebody like you, it's really interesting to hear what we're doing in terms of education and where we're going forward with this to educate and also improve infrastructure. So
Yeah, and I think that if people visited the infrastructure where their material was going, the transfer stations, the landfills, the waste to energy facilities, recycling MRFs, the composting facilities and anaerobic digestion facilities, I think, again, if people can picture where their material is going, I think they have a lot easier time connecting the dots. And, especially with something like anaerobic digestion or composting, the end result, the material that is generated on the back end of those processes has to go somewhere as well. And so knowing that the material that you put in has an effect on the material going out. We always say that composting is a manufacturing process, and so being careful about contamination, which is another big challenge for the industry.
absolutely. We're talking about home consumption as well as restaurants. Where do you see the importance of, where it comes to restaurants having those partnerships, relationships with local haulers, local suppliers, local food banks to be able to manage that food waste?
It's absolutely paramount and essential because food is inherently local because it is perishable a lot of the times and it's heavy, and the solutions really need to be local solutions. So, when it comes to food banks and donation agencies, coverage is a big deal. And so it might not even be one food bank or agency that can provide the amount of coverage, 7 days a week, sometimes 24/7 that folks need to connect those dots. And same thing when it comes to organics recycling and food waste recycling, and that you, in general, really don't want it to go hundreds of miles away. You want it to stay in a pretty tight radius. And so having close partnerships with, again, local haulers and local processing facilities is very important because, we talked earlier about the environmental impact. And, part of that is making sure that, the material stays close and that you're not burning a lot of diesel, taking it hundreds and hundreds of miles away.
Speaking of home consumption, just to get back to a point Steph was making earlier, I working at this job has made me feel like such a risk taker because of labeling on food items. That Best Buy date I used to fear, but now I'm like, I can get more out of this. I can keep going. So I'm like, I just gotta take a chance here. I gotta use more than this than I think I can. Especially with milk. Milk's been getting me.
Yeah, I think it's important, the statistic that something like $1,500 is the average cost of the food that an average family throws away every year. And that's something like leaving a bag of groceries and taking home too. Just the amount of food and land and water that it takes to make all the amazing food that we eat. To not eat it is a shame. And so making sure, things like meal planning, making sure that, techniques like freezing your food if you're not going to be able to get to it. And then just trusting, like you were talking about, trusting your senses. And just because a box has a date on it doesn't necessarily mean that the product is bad.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's kind of shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about your session at WasteExpo. What now that we've heard kind of the gambit between why these changing these systems is important to consumer education. What are you going to be what are you going to share with us here?
So we'll be talking about organics recycling at new and existing restaurant locations. And so I'll be speaking with Dawn Rhodes, who's the Senior Sustainability Specialist with Chick-fil-A. Really excited to present with her some of the tricks and tips and techniques that her restaurant brand uses, and talk more generally about the challenges and the solutions for recycling food waste at new and existing restaurant locations. And so there is a difference, with a lot of the brands that we work with. We are constantly working on adding organics recycling at new locations. But then when we go back and we look at adding it at hundreds or thousands of existing locations, we call that an infill project. There are some different considerations when you're talking about new versus existing restaurants.
I'm just curious, what are the most common foods, with the clients that you work with, that, what are the most common foods that are thrown away? Is it in restaurants? Is it the onions? Is it dairy? Like, what kind of products do you see most commonly wasted?
That's a great question. And so, we talked earlier about how labeling the bin is so important. There's a lot of discussion around whether it's food waste or food scraps or wasted food. And, I'm of the opinion that, wherever there's people, there's food waste, because, somebody's not going to eat the crust on their peanut butter and jelly, but also there's the apple cores and the orange peels and the carrot tops that really are a stretch to consume. Especially after you made your stock with it. There is a certain point that you're gonna have material that has a really high value, going into an anaerobic digestion or a composting process that is not valuable at your restaurant location. And so, folks that are preparing food fresh, they've got, the bottoms of lettuces, and the leaves of the lettuce that aren't perfect. They've got the tops of the strawberries. They've got, the avocado pits and avocado peels. So there are things that just, are sort of not meant to be consumed in the first place. And when folks are preparing fresh food, they've got eggshells and they've got all different kinds of materials that, in the best of worlds, were never really meant to be consumed. And then, at the end of the day, if there's things that, they can't sell, then, that's where, hopefully donation and recovery comes in. But folks have a lot of material that they're generating, whether they are really, really good at donation and ordering or not, because there's going to be material generated in that cooking process that that can't be sold to customers.
Oh, absolutely. So, I guess, we're kind of winding down here. What is one way restaurants can get started on their journey to reducing their food waste? And also, do you have a key takeaway from the presentation that you could share with us today that'll kind of lead us into Waste Expo, but also make people, more excited to learn more about food waste?
Yeah, that's the hard part, is getting started. I think a lot of folks really want to do this and don't exactly know how. And so there's a yuck factor, or ick factor, where, people say, hey, that's kind of gross food waste. But, I always like to remind people that it's the same exact material that you're already throwing away. It's just, I call it the flick of the wrist. It's either gonna go in the black bin or the green bin. It's actually a lot of times a much cleaner program to keep it separated. That way it's not, leaking out of your dumpster, your compactor into the parking lot and smelling bad. It's a dedicated program that actually, makes that material much easier to deal with. But seeing is believing a lot of times. So, if folks are interested in getting started, going somewhere that currently has a program like this in place, something clicks, like we were talking about going to see the facilities, like, oh, this actually isn't that big of a deal and isn't that hard. And once you see somebody else doing it, you say, oh, I can do that. And another takeaway is that if it is just in a black bag, mixed with all kinds of other materials, then a lot of times people say, I don't have that much. I don't generate that much material. But if you really start to separate it out, or do a material characterization or waste audit, like I mentioned earlier, then a lot of times people are very surprised and say, oh, actually, we do generate quite a bit of material. And that's important because it does have, an impact on greenhouse gas emissions. And also, if those knock-on effects that I was talking about earlier, if you're able to keep it out of your MSW stream, you can have a cleaner program and you can get less frequent pickups. And that's one of the, things that is sort of the elephant in the room, which is that it is an added line item. It is an added cost, but there are ways to offset that, again, by reducing your trash service, and by, again, those smarter ordering techniques and things like, increased commodity rebates that can help offset, and even labor savings that can help offset any kind of costs associated with the program.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ryan. I'm Stephanie Valentic. Gage Edwards is on with us today. We're with Waste 360. You can find out more about WasteExpo at wasteexpo.com. You can find our podcast on all of your favorite platforms, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. And remember, it's our world. Let's not waste it.